Hi everyone, I'm Ananya and today we are making focaccia. This is a no-knead recipe and is very light, fluffy and absolutely savory. So let's get started right to the recipe. As the first step, we'll start prepping the yeast. We will need the ingredients listed and first we will add the warm water to a medium-sized bowl. Please note that the water needs to be slightly warm so that it activates the yeast but not so hot that it ends up killing the yeast. We add half a tablespoon of honey to the water and then we stir it slightly so that the honey starts dissolving in the water. We then add 1 teaspoon of yeast to the mixture and then we stir this mixture as well so that the yeast starts mixing up with the water and honey. We then let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes. Next up, we prepare the dry ingredients. We take 2.5 cups or 300 grams of flour and add it to another mixing bowl. We will also add half tablespoon of salt to the flour. We need to stir this mixture with a whisk so that the salt gets evenly distributed. While we were prepping the flour, the yeast has bloomed in the meanwhile. We see that bubbles have developed in the yeast mixture, indicating that the yeast is ready to be used now and added in the flour mixture. Once the yeast is added to the flour mixture, we need to mix it together with a spatula. While mixing, you may see that the dough is sticking to the spatula, the bowl and even your hands, but that's completely okay because the dough is supposed to be very soft and sticky. Keep mixing the dough until all of it comes together into one shaggy mess at the end. Next up, we take another large bowl and we add few tablespoons of olive oil to the bowl. We swirl it around so that all the sides of the bowl are covered evenly with a layer of olive oil. We then place the dough in the bowl covered with olive oil and then we turn the dough over in such a way that all of the sides get covered evenly with a layer of olive oil. This will help prevent stickiness and the dough can rest properly in the bowl now. Once the dough is coated in oil, we cover the bowl with a plastic wrap or a kitchen towel and then we have to place this in the fridge for 12 to 18 hours. The next morning, we take the dough out of the fridge and we let it come to room temperature for 30 to 45 minutes. We then need to fold the dough over itself for a total of 4 times. I'm now transferring the dough into a bigger bowl because it was getting difficult for me to continue the folds in the same bowl. You can continue doing it in the same bowl if you have sufficient space. We then repeat this process of folding all of the 4 sides another 2 to 3 times. This helps develop the gluten while creating a light and airy structure. Once we have folded the dough 2 to 3 times, we then cover it with a kitchen cloth and let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, we see that the dough has risen slightly again. I then take a third of the dough for baking. You can use the entire dough if you have a big enough pan. I don't, which is why I am taking a third of the dough and placing it for baking purposes. Alternatively, you can also store the rest of the dough in your fridge for baking later. I take another pan and oil it very well to make sure that the dough does not end up sticking to the bottom or the sides of the pan. Oiling forms a very important part of making the focaccia. Once all sides of the pan are properly oiled, we take the 1/3 of the dough which we had cut earlier and place it in the pan. Gently stretch the dough to the edges of the pan. Initially, it might not stretch entirely, and that's perfectly okay. Stretch it as much as you can and let it rest for another half an hour. After 20 to 30 minutes, we take the dough and gently try to stretch it again so that it fills the edges of the pan. We have to be very gentle while stretching so that we don't end up tearing the dough. If you see your dough is still springing back to the touch, you might need to let it rest for another 20 to 30 minutes before stretching it again. For me, I see the dough has reached the edges of the bowl and we let it rest for some time before the final process. After 20 minutes, we take the dough and we see that it has risen slightly to fill the entire pan. Next up, we need to oil the upper layer of the dough before we go ahead to dimpling. Here I have fried some garlic and added some dried herbs into the oil so that the oil gets its garlicky flavor, but you can choose to layer it with just extra virgin olive oil. Once the upper layer is properly coated in oil, we then go ahead to the favorite part of the process called as dimpling. Press your fingertips into this focaccia dough, creating dimples all over. However, be careful not to poke your fingernails into the dough. Once you have dimpled the dough enough, you can choose to add in the ingredients of your choice. Here I am going ahead with garlic, chili oil and cheese to get that spicy and bold flavor. You can even choose to add just fresh or dried herbs like rosemary and thyme. Adding these helps the dough absorb the flavors and makes the focaccia very tasty and savory. Alternately, you can also choose to skip the herbs for just a plain focaccia. While we are adding the toppings to the dough, please make sure to preheat the oven to 200 degrees Celsius. Once preheated, we bake the dough for 25 minutes or until the top is golden brown. And here you go! Here is your golden brown, crunchy and absolutely delicious focaccia ready to be served. You can serve the bread warm or let it cool before serving. Enjoy!